y'all, and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be doing a video that I actually filmed already, but that was before I had the fancy editing software for which to place photos upon on screen whilst talking about them. And as that is the much preferred method of visualization, we're gonna refilm it for you all today. And that is gonna be talking about some products, some newer, some middle ground, not a lot that are old, but some newer products that have been released that Soraya from 5 or 6 years ago would have jumped upon for one reason or another. Now, I have expressed to you all that at one point I was the worst best type of consumer, meaning I was a bad consumer in the sense that I bought everything, but I was a good consumer in the sense that I bought everything. Kind of a double-edged sword going on there. So there was a time in my makeup journey where if it came out high-end, low-end, drugstore, luxury, if it was a new product, I wanted it. Whether it worked for me or didn't work for me, whether I ever used it or whateverness. So we're just gonna talk about some key pieces that really pulled on the Soraya of olden days heartstrings. And we're gonna start off with something from Lime Crime, which for a long time was a brand that I coveted and lusted after. It was very much a facet of one of my aesthetics. And the two palettes that I would have leapt on in oh my goodness, these would have been in my cart and in my hot little hands in like an instant. The Venus Vivid palette and the Venus Immortalis palette. Now, both of these palettes appeals to a certain part of 5 years ago Soraya. The Vivid palette, I mean, when I started doing makeup, basically I was a 1980s disco reject. I would slap that color on without any care for blending or any sort of thing like that. Just one color, just whoosh. I don't think I applied anything to my lower lash line, so we just had a stamp of color on the eyelid here. And so color was my thing. Blue, pink, green, red, yellow. If it was a primary color, I wanted it on my lid. And so this back then, especially considering the fact that I feel had it been released back then, it would have been way more revolutionary than it was being released in 2019, because nowadays, we've got colored palettes coming raining down from the skies on us. Every brand got a colored palette. Every brand got multiple colorful palettes. So back then, would have been in my cart, and kind of same with the Immortalis one, which I did use a lot more black back in the day. Once again, we're doing one color, one eyeshadow, like using one eyeshadow. Those sort of looks where you just took the color and you just whoosh, all over. And so this was the same method in which I applied my gothic makeup, my emo alternative scene days. And so once again, had this been released, 5, 6 years ago, I mean, a sort of mixture of things. You have the color scheme, like I said, which appealed to the dark, dead era of Soraya past. The packaging, the aesthetic, I mean, the way they have taken the Venus and just reimagined it in all these different fantastical color stories. I mean, it would have been a shut up and take my money moment. But me now, as you guys all know, I tend to use less black. I'm not sure why. Maybe I'm not as creative. Maybe I'm not as emo. Or maybe I'm just lazy because black is a really difficult color to work with. You gotta have some finessing to be able to blend that shiz. So back in the day, this would have been mine. But now I'm like, I'm good. I can live without it. Part of it. I feel like if Lime Crime bumped those prices down to like 28 rather than 38, I would be a little bit more inclined. But for the price and how many shades you get and everything like that, I got plenty. Okay, something that was a little bit more recent. This back in the day, once again, this is we're working past tense here. So, thinking back to me then, I had not made the realizations. I had not had the revelation of what I use and what I don't use as I am now. But the Too Faced Triple Scoop Highlighter Palette. Y'all, it's ice cream themed. It's highlighters. It's a palette. This had everything I would have wanted in a palette back in the day. Like I said, highlighter, boom. Palette, boom. Too Faced, boom. There's a lot of Too Faced stuff that I would have bought back in the day, because back in the day, before we had all this like quality controversy, I basically bought everything that Too Faced released. Now, admittedly, 5-6 years ago, they weren't releasing nearly as much, but you get what I mean. And looking at it now, looking at swatches, I know my gal, Lacey at Spooky, I always want to reverse the two. Spooky Lips and Fat Hips. She loves this thing. She got it and she loves it. And I look at it and I'm like, all right, your girl is pasty. When I am tan, in the summertime, when I have emerged from my cave of sorrow, I may be like a lighter shade of pale, but that's about it. And looking at this, you've got one shade that would work perfectly on this complexion. And then the other two that are obviously way too dark. And I could go into the whole, oh, well, you know, you can use the one to kind of like, mix with the others to make them work. But if I look at it, I'm like, well, the white one looks kind of more like a glittery, effervescent fairy fart top coater. So the formulas are different. And I'm like, if I'm gonna spend my money on something, I'm gonna have all the shades work, or at least more than just one. Whereas me from back in the day, I would have just, like I said, I'd have just bought it. I'd have just been like, it's new, it's highlighter, it's a palette, it's Too Faced, mine. Because I cannot tell you how much stuff I had and still kind of have that I just got, whether it worked for me or not. Like a highlighter collection would be released and I'm like, I need all of those, even though 3 out of the 7 were obviously for those of the deeper melanin. You know, bronzers, you know, back in the day, I would have bought all the Anastasia, all the back, you know, because I have a problem. It's less of a problem now, but, So I'm glad that I'm at least somewhat, although, you know, your girl still buys way too much. But at least I'm a little bit better now. Just a titchy bit. Okay, then something that, another thing, I mean, I'm sure y'all have realized this by now. I am a slut for aesthetics. You all know that's kind of how I live my life by. I love a good aesthetic. And when it's my aesthetic or appeals to one of my many multifaceted aesthetics, I yearn for it. I long for it. It makes me want to buy it 10% more. And once again, coupling this with the fact that, you know, when I was younger, I just shut up and buy it. The Pur Cosmetics and Barbie collection. Now this, the eyeshadow palette, boring. I would have bought it anyway because I had no consideration of good layouts and bad layouts. It also did not matter if I already had that same palette from someone else in a different conglomeration. What mattered was that the packaging was pink and rhinestone studded and all things just bubblegum kawaii Barbie vintagey princess. I mean, I don't consider myself, my brothers used to joke and they were like, you know, we should have gullible written on your forehead. Cause I was, you know, they got me good many a time. But kind of like when it comes to, you know, things in the materialistic world, I am so easily influenced. It's so bad, you know. It's like the type of thing, you know, Becca releases a highlighter with a funny imprint and you're like, oh, I totally don't need that highlighter, but it has a pig on it. You know, that sort of thing, you know. Oh, I have 12,000 plaid shirts, but I need this one because the size of the plaid check is like just 0.5 millimeter smaller than another one I have. It's that sort of justification that gets me in trouble. But thankfully, in 2019, I was able to walk away from that collection unscathed because, let's be honest, the eyeshadow palette is boring. I don't use bullet lipsticks anymore, and I don't even know what else was in the collection. Okay, all right. Jeffree Star The Glosses lip gloss collection release. Typically, I am a liquid lipstick type of person. 5 years ago, I wasn't, because I was like, I got dry lips and liquid lipstick ain't for me. I wasn't necessarily either a gloss person either. It was definitely a bullet lipstick situation. But let me tell you, this whole thing back in the day, had it been released then, there were a couple things about it that would have made it dangerous for me to resist. Number one, it would have been from someone that I definitely would have wanted to support. Number two, fancy packaging. Number three, new release. Gotta have it. And number four, the completionist in me. Like I was saying, back in the day, if a range was released, you know, lipsticks, I remember back in the day, I used to buy, Essie would launch their new like summer, they did collections, and I would need the whole line, you know, $9 nail polish, but I would need the whole line. And so kind of in the same way, it's like, you know, oh, you know, you can't just get one or two and see how you like it and maybe come back. No. I need each and every single one of them right now. Because like I said, I was a freaking completionist and I wanted to have everything. And also, digging a little deep here, back in the day, my self-esteem, my awesome sauceness, the amazing ball of charisma and self-loving here wasn't exactly how I was back then. In fact, it was quite the opposite. So I tended to get my my self-worth from how much crap I had. And so in my mind, I would be all like, well, in order to be like, you know, really liked, in order for people to be like, wow, she has got her stuff together, you need the whole shebang bang. You know, it's like, you know, they're not gonna think you're cool and awesome sauce if you have one. If you have all of them, you know, I got something from that. Whereas now I'm like, if I have the whole collection, the only thing people are gonna think is that I have a problem. Okay, all right. This one is kind of like not too like crazy, whatever, but the Too Faced Natural Lust palette. Now, this sort of falls into the simple reality of back in the day, Soraya. If it was a Too Faced release, I bought it. And that kind of goes into the fact that back in the day, they didn't release as much, so it was easier to do so. The first natural love, whatever, palette I bought, was not a fan. I have since decluttered it. Partly because, and why, once again, we're getting into some depth and some deepening and some reasoning behind all this. Part of why I would have bought it is simply because, you know, we're evaluating who I was as a person. Right back then, once again, easily influenced. And watching the Sephora VIB sale haul, just a bunch of other hauls, you know, people were buying this. People were saying, oh, it's beautiful, it's amazing, it's great, it's fantastic. So 5 years ago, I would have seen that and been like, it's amazing, it's fantastic, everyone's buying it. Well, I need to buy it. I need to be a part of that cool group that loves and wears the Too Faced Natural Lust palette. That's simply the way my brain functioned. But thankfully now I can be like, you love it? That's great, fantastic, I'm gonna go love something else. Okay, these two kind of like go hand in hand together. The Anastasia Beverly Hills Shimmery Body Oil and the Urban Decay, those like loose body highlighters. They released with the honey collection. They did a honey one, they did a heat one with the Naked Heat palette, and they did a cherry one for the cherry naked palette. As much as I would like to be a shimmery, glowy, glimmering goddess, I absolutely despise. I love highlighter, I love glitter. You all know this. It is a very big part of my life. But I hate, like, I have a person, I love highlighter. I hate swatching it in videos for y'all because then I've got glitter and shimmer and schwitz all up in here. And unless you're like wearing like a little tank top or a little slinky whateverness, I'm like, why am I slathering myself with something that is then going to get on my clothes, get on my husband, get on my cat, get on everything I come into in contact afterward. I'm then going to be trying to wash it out of my clothes for the next 5 years. The practical me is being very good about this, but back then, once again, multiple like reasonings for what, you know? Shades wouldn't have worked for me. I think the honey one would be the only one that would work for me. Would have bought it anyway because they're a set. They're a trio. You can't separate. It's like, you know, you got kids. You can't separate one from the others. It's a family. Two, you know, I don't go anywhere that I need to shimmer my décolleté or my legs or my shoulders or anything like that. I'm not an Instagram model strolling across the beach in a bikini. I also don't go out to social events, and I don't party because I'm poor and because I'm antisocial. So these would have been things that I purchased just for the sake of purchasing them because they were new, and they would literally probably still be sitting in my collection now being like, well, I paid the money for them, and maybe somehow, some way, someday, I will need a Naked Heat, Naked Cherry, Naked Honey Shimmering body powder. And in the same way with the oil. Now I understand people are like, well, you rub it on and it dries down. And I'm like, it's still gonna schwitz. It's still gonna get glitter everywhere. I mean, unless you are like spraying hairspray over this crap to keep it on your whatevers, you are going to get some amount of glitter shedding. And I also would have bought it because, quite frankly, I like sparkly and shiny things. I am very much a human incarnation of a magpie, kind of mixed with a little bit of a raccoon, where we're rummaging around and we just see something shiny. It's like, oh boy. And I would have bought it, and it would have just sat there looking pretty on my non-existent vanity, or not looking pretty and being ignored in my drawers. Then another that was probably, out of all of these, the closest thing of 2019 Soraya purchasing. The Tarteist Pro Remix palette. Now, I bought the first Tarteist Pro. I think it's one of Tarte's best palettes. The matte to shimmer ratio is amazing. The color story is feasible, not the most amazing, you know, exciting. But for Tarte, it's not that bad. Then they released the Remix palette, which was colorful. And once again, sort of going back, you know, to the Venus Vivid palette, had this been released 5 years ago when there wasn't a colored palette every other second, it would have been quite revolutionary of the time. And me, being someone who loves the color, me being someone who had not yet established my great relationship with matte shadows, I would have been all about this thing. I would have been on it so hard. I'd have been slamming that pink shimmer into my crease and having it crack and fade and do all of its things. I would have been doing it, and I would have been doing it hard. But me, learning now, Tarte doesn't have my favorite formula. The matte to shimmer ratio in that palette, not the cutest. And so in all honesty, I'm glad that I'm able to look back on this and be like, wow, you really have progressed. You're making progress slowly but surely. And maybe in another 5 years, I will have stopped collecting the Anastasia palettes. It's a little too soon to tell, but if any of y'all are still with me, then I'll let you know. But that was just me kind of wanting to do just a fun little, you know, look back, a little self-analyzation, a little self-reflection, and give myself a nice little pat on the back, you know, that I have progressed some, and there are things that I don't want to buy now. Obviously, I'd love to hear y'all's thoughts on these products. I know a lot of you love the Immortalis palette as well as the Vivid one. So yeah. Let me know what's going down with any of these, and if you think they're absolutely fan-tucking-fastic. And let me know something that's released that you would have bought 5 years ago. What would your younger self have pounced on? But thank you guys so much for watching. I love you, and as always, keep it real. Mwah!